One of less glamorous patterns with my pitiful content is that I frequently point out flaws and leave them hanging. It would be at least in good fashion to come up with some sort of solution. Especially when I keep complaining about this godforsaken class and yet keep playing it, which might be some weird form of self-flagellation at this point. Nonetheless, it's finally time for the moron speaking to become a little more productive than forgotten jar of bacon grease left in abandoned storehouse and go from just describing problems to proposing solutions. Mace main hand was the first warrior weapon I chose to criticize, and the one I probably have the most bones to pick with, as its problems are as blatantly obvious as the fact that setting your rear on fire isn't a sign of brilliance. However, most of aforementioned problems are, at least partially, the fault of age, and we can't hold against our current tremendous trio that weapon skills conceived over a decade ago by people who no longer work at ArenaNet aren't synergizing with traits introduced to the game 10 years later. Therefore, with no bad blood towards almighty balance men, let us embark on the magical voyage of imagination and conceive a potential rework of main hand Mace. If you find this form of content interesting, be sure to let me know and consider joining Bullshit Brigade's Discord server or supporting me financially through Patreon so I can continue being the worst Guild Wars YouTuber by a large margin. But with that out of the way, let us begin. The point of our rework is to modernize the Mace toolkit, with generally preserving the general flavor of it. First of all, what defines Mace? It is a melee weapon, trading mobility for lockdown and defenses. Secondly, there are two builds currently utilizing the Mace for what seems to be the closest to its intended purpose, those being Mace Warhorn version of support builds and dual Mace balls to the walls damage build with aggressive onslaught. I specifically omit the Akim condition Berserker, as with having zero condition applications in its core toolset, Mace was quite clearly not planned to be a part of a condition build. First important question to answer is, what does Mace actually do sufficiently well that makes it usable in both builds in question? Simple answer is, the burst skill. Both Skullcrack and Skullgrinder aren't showing their age to the same extent rest of the weapon does, and are pretty much the backbone of all its builds, so they'll receive the least changes, if any. Skills 2 and 3, however, aren't in such glamorous spot. Counterblow blocks one attack with a potential for more specifically in combination with Shieldmaster, and specifically against projectiles. In one word, it's basically Aegis. Aegis that you have to channel. What's supposed to make this skill better than just Aegis is counter swing you are performing after, and adrenaline you get for manually ending the skill or not getting attacked. Unlike Ripost's counter, however, which comes out quickly, counter blows takes roughly twice the time Riposte does, making it unreliable at the one thing it's supposed to be doing. Furthermore, due to how Shieldmaster trait interaction is implemented, said counter swing plain cannot be activated against targets using projectile attacks, even when basically shoving ourselves into their face. All the while, obvious counter synergy with Merciless Hammer begs for attention, as you can't activate this skill against CC'd target, unless they end up getting stunned in the middle of some pulsing field of something. In short, boring, unreliable, unresponsive, and plain scuffed. Hommelbash has even less going on under the hood. It dazes and gives you, just you, a little barrier on interrupt. Furthermore, said daze is 1 second long, meaning you can't set up pretty much anything with it, and you can't use it against CC targets either, as that would override the previous, usually longer, better CC. Yeah, we're going to replace both of these. The question is, with what? We need something to make the mace good for both builds that want to run it, without pushing either one over the edge. Support Warrior yearns for adrenaline generation and boon or healing access outside of staff, while Mace DPS, especially with new offhand, doesn't lack damage and only wants to be able to attack disabled opponents with its skills. Now, we know the problems we're trying to solve, what identity we're trying to preserve, and what each of builds wants. Time to burn the kitchen. Knowing that both support and DPS builds could use offensive boons, we will visit Valiant Leap and Ctrl-C its boon generation, as well as granting adrenaline if an ally is affected, for the sake of supports and its adrenaline generation. Then we'll put that on the animation copied from Eviscerate alongside its level 1 damage. Set damage is kind of mediocre for current Guild Wars 2 landscape, and set animation is just good enough not to interfere with skill's intended purpose of reliably hitting disabled targets. The minuscule mobility here mostly exists due to Tremor being ranged and existence of allies on the battlefield, which can CC targets as well. This way you also have a little something to catch up with people who stun broke out of your CC, alongside having a leap finisher now. And new skill 3 takes the role of defensive skill in this setup. It will be a short block with counterattack, like previous counterblow, but borrowing animations from Riposte, as they are better and smoother than those from counterblow. And instead of doing damage on the counter, it will knock enemies back with the same knockback staggering blow enjoys, and grant minuscule amounts of barrier, vigor and regeneration to you and your allies, doubled for allies other than yourself, on top of being a blast finisher. Ending skill manually will yield the same effect. Whilst blocking, you will regenerate health and endurance at speeds of 229 HP, copied from Healing Signet's passive, and 20 endurance per second respectively. Essentially, it is stronger but less spammy counterblow, focusing on what's best about it, solid defense, instead of trying to marry itself with unreliable damage. Last thing I'd like to mention are burst skills. For core, I don't think any change is really needed, even its animation doesn't suck, and scaling on stun is no joke. That said, I think it could remove one boon per adrenaline level, prioritizing defensive ones. With how difficult it is already to lock down mobile specs, this wouldn't swing in Warrior's favor any matchup that isn't already Warrior favored. However, it would allow support Warrior specifically to set up damage for its allies a little more reliably. In case of Skull Grinder though, I think reducing its confusion application and doubling its bleed application so that skill synergizes with Relic of Fractal and not Akeem would be healthier for the game, but that's basically because both Confusion and Relic of Akeem are unhealthy for the game on their own. Making damage output of Skull Grinder consistent but unable to randomly one-shot would probably please everyone everywhere, and with another 2 finishes in store we have quite a formidable synergy with Torch and King of Fires, which is what Warrior's Condi builds should have relied on anyway, so here's that. This redesign is very simple. Some might even say it's more boring than my life, but that's partially the bloody point. Like most Warrior weapons, Mace doesn't need much. With how strong Warrior's traits are, especially those surrounding CC, the only thing Mace needs to accomplish is not to be an active hindrance, and it'll end up working. That said, my plain boring ideas don't necessarily have to be the best ones, and if you think you have an idea worth mentioning, I'll see you in the comment section. As usual, special signs of gratitude towards the generous Patreon supporters helping me bankroll my miserable existence. You're all truly welcome. Crabface out.